What did your family say that finally made you realize you had to stop letting them control you? My high school basketball coach crossed a line, so I reported him to the school and told my parents. Instead of supporting me, they smeared my reputation online to defend him. I cut them off until a month later, when an anonymous email about the coach made them regret everything and beg for my forgiveness. I'd been playing basketball since I was 6, not because I loved it, but because it was non-negotiable in my family. My dad was a college point guard, and my mom coached a girls' rec league. Even my little sister was a star on her middle school team. When I made the varsity team as a sophomore in our small Colorado town, my parents acted like my future was set, WNBA or bust. But I was never that good. I spent more time on the bench than on the court. I practiced hard, stayed late, and studied plays, but basketball just didn't click for me. Still, I stuck with it because my teammates were my lifeline. They made me feel like I belonged, even if I wasn't a star. But one person made every practice a living hell. Coach Harlan. All coaches yell, and I could handle that. But Harlan's yelling wasn't about motivation. It was personal. He'd single out girls during drills, mocking our weight or calling us soft. His stares during warm-ups felt wrong, and he'd push for one coaching, after hours, getting sulky when we said no. At first, I thought I was imagining it. My parents worshipped him. Dad called him a game changer, who'd get me a college scholarship if I toughed it out. Telling them he creeped me out wasn't an option. The worse I played, the harder he came at me. During scrimmages, he'd scream that I was a waste of a jersey, or dragging the team down. I'd nod and pretend it didn't hurt, but it did. Then, a few weeks ago, I missed an easy layup in practice, and he lost it. Jesus, Kayla, you're a damn embarrassment, he shouted. You're lucky I even let you wear that uniform. Maybe if you stayed late and worked those lazy legs, you wouldn't be such a liability. The gym went quiet. Everyone heard, but no one moved. I opened my mouth to say something, but my teammate Jenna beat me to it. She stepped forward, cool as ice, and said, "If you talk to her like that again, I'll take that whistle and shove it where the sun doesn't shine." The team froze. Harlan's face turned purple. "You're out of line, Jenna," he snapped. "No, you're not a coach," she shot back. "You're a creep with a clipboard." I couldn't breathe, staring at the floor, wishing I could disappear. Harlan bellowed, "Both of you off my court. You're done." But then something wild happened. The other girls set down their water bottles and walked over, forming a line in front of Jenna and me. No one spoke, but the message was clear. Even our quietest player, the backup center, looked Harlan dead in the eye and said, "Maybe we should tell the principal about your weird obsession with private practices." Harlan backpedaled, claiming we were overreacting. But it was too late. We'd seen through him. That night, I told my parents what happened, hoping they'd finally listen. They didn't. "Are you sure you're not just upset about sitting the bench?" Mom asked. Dad crossed his arms. "This is why kids don't succeed. They can't handle tough coaching." "It's not coaching," I said. "He makes me feel unsafe." Mom cut me off. "Kayla, we've known Coach Harlan forever. He's a pro. You need to grow a thicker skin." That's when I realized my words didn't matter. To them, Harlan was a hoops legend, and I was just a benchwarmer causing trouble. The next morning, Dad told me to apologize to Harlan. "Think about college scouts," he said. "You don't want to tank your future over a misunderstanding." I didn't argue. I just went to my room and sat on the floor, tears streaming down my face. I cried for the girl who tried so hard to make her parents proud, who thought more effort would earn their respect. That girl was gone. After school, the team met without Harlan. The principal had received multiple complaints, and the girls had been collecting screenshots of his creepy texts for weeks. An investigation was underway, and Harlan was suspended. When I got home, Dad was waiting in the kitchen. "Did you talk to the principal?" he asked. I nodded. "So how are you fixing this mess?" I looked him in the eye, steady for the first time. It's not my mess," Mom gasped. "Kayla, don't be dramatic." But I didn't wait for her to finish. I grabbed a bag, stuffed it with clothes, and left. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I was done being their perfect daughter. I texted Jenna, "Can I crash at your place tonight?" She replied instantly, "Mom's already making up the couch." I slipped out the back door while my parents argued in the living room. At Jenna's, her mom opened the door before I could knock. "Come on in, sweetie," she said, pulling me into a hug. Jenna told me everything. "Stay as long as you need." That night, I slept better than I had in years. No pressure, no guilt, just quiet. But it didn't last. The next morning, my phone blew up with texts from my parents. Dad threatened to call the cops if I didn't come home. Mom said I was tearing the family apart. Then my sister, Ellie, sent the worst one. "Mom and Dad are meeting Harlan tomorrow to hear his side. They want you to drop the complaint. Watch out." I stared at my phone, stunned. My parents were siding with Harlan after everything I'd said. This wasn't just about basketball anymore. It was about control. For the first time, I wasn't going to let them win. Jenna's mom, Ms. Lopez, saw my face and asked what was wrong. When I showed her the texts, she said, "You're staying here tonight, Kayla. I'll call your parents and let them know you're safe." She took my phone and made the call. I caught phrases like "completely unacceptable" and "putting her in danger." When she came back, she looked worried. "Your parents insist you come home to sort this out as a family," she said, making air quotes. "I told them you're welcome here until things calm down." That night, I barely slept. My phone kept buzzing with guilt, tripping texts from Dad. "You're breaking your mother's heart," and veiled threats. "You'll regret this for the rest of your life." Mom took a softer approach, saying I was confused and misinterpreting things. I turned my phone off at midnight, but I couldn't stop picturing them sitting with Harlan, nodding as he spun lies about me being too sensitive. Monday morning, Jenna lent me clothes and Ms. Lopez drove us to school. At the entrance, our teammates were waiting. You okay? One asked. We texted you. I explained I'd turned off my phone. Another girl frowned. Harlan's telling people you made it all up to get him fired for benching you. My stomach dropped. That's a lie. We know, she said. No one believes him. Well, except. She trailed off, glancing across the parking lot. My sister Ellie was getting out of Dad's car. She saw us, looked away and hurried inside. Ellie told some kids on her team you're going through a phase. Another teammate said you always blow things out of proportion. It felt like a punch to the gut. My own sister was against me. The school day was brutal. Whispers followed me in the halls, and some kids from other teams shot me dirty looks. Harlan had fans, not just my parents. At lunch, I hid in the library, too raw to face the cafeteria. Then my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I believe you about Coach Harlan. He did the same to me at Lincoln High 3 years ago. No one listened. Stay strong. My hands shook. Harlan had a history. I texted back for more details, but got no reply. After school, I met with Principal Carter to give a formal statement. Jenna waited outside for moral support. Inside, Carter looked exhausted but serious. We're taking this very seriously, Kayla, she said. Other students have come forward too. I felt a wave of relief I wasn't alone, but then her face tightened. Your parents called this morning. They're concerned about your mental health, suggesting you might be exaggerating to get attention. I flushed with anger and shame. That's not true, asked the team. I did, she said. Their stories match yours. That's why I wanted to hear from you directly. Your parents also mentioned you ran away. I explained I was at Jenna's, feeling unsafe at home after they backed Harlan. She raised an eyebrow but nodded, jotting notes. The rest of the meeting went smoothly. I gave my statement, she recorded it, and I signed some forms. Outside, Jenna showed me a Facebook post from my mom. Heartbroken that our daughter is making false claims against a respected coach instead of accepting constructive criticism. Teen mental health is so misunderstood. Pray for our family during this challenging time. Comments poured in. My aunt, she's always been sensitive, sending love. Dad's coworker, kids today can't handle discipline. Stay strong. I felt sick. My parents were painting me as unstable to protect Harlan. I handed Jenna's phone back, hands trembling. They're monsters, I whispered. They're in denial. Jenna said. They can't admit they trusted a creep over you. That night at Jenna's, I got 3 more anonymous texts with similar stories about Harlan, one from a girl at his old school, another from his summer camp player, and one from a volleyball player at our school. I forwarded them to Principal Carter. This was bigger than our team. Harlan had been doing this for years. By Tuesday, things escalated. My parents, failing to shame me publicly, turned to legal threats. During second period, I was called to the office. Dad was there with Principal Carter and a district lawyer. Your father's concerned about your living situation, Carter said. Dad cut in. You're coming home today, Kayla. This little tantrum's gone far enough. The lawyer interjected. At 17, Kayla isn't considered a runaway under state law as long as her whereabouts are known and she's in a safe environment. Dad's face reddened. She's my daughter. You can't keep her from her family. I stayed calm. I'm staying at Jenna's. Her parents know. I'm still in school. I'm safe. This is ridiculous, he snapped. You're throwing away your future over hurt feelings. Harlan was trying to make you better. Carter interrupted. Mr. Brooks, we've received multiple reports about Coach Harlan, not just from Kayla. Dad scoffed. Teenage girls stick together. They're making it up. The lawyer cleared her throat. Actually, we've had complaints spanning years and multiple schools. That shut him up, at least for the moment. The meeting ended with no resolution. I refused to go home, and legally, they couldn't force me. As I left, Dad grabbed my arm. Your mom's devastated. He hissed. Is that what you want, to destroy our family? I pulled free. You destroyed it when you chose Harlan over me. The rest of the week was a blur of anxiety and small victories. By Wednesday, I learned the school board scheduled a special meeting for Monday to address Harlan's case. On Thursday, Ellie approached me in the hall. Mom and Dad want you home, she said. They'll let it go if you admit you overreacted. Overreacted, I said. Ellie, you've seen how he treats us. She shrugged. Coaches yell, it's sports. What about the creepy comments, the way he stares? She looked away. Dad says you're imagining things because you can't handle criticism. You believe that? I asked, hurt flooding me. I don't know what to believe, she muttered, but this started when you left. No, I said. It started when they cared more about basketball than my safety. She had no response. By Friday, things got uglier. Someone likely Harlan's allies leaked parts of my confidential statement, twisted to make me sound like I was whining about tough coaching. Screenshots spread through student group chats. Some kids supported me, but others called me a snowflake. My team formed a protective circle around me in the halls. That afternoon, Mom texted, "We're ready to work this out as a family. Come home for dinner Sunday. Just you, me, and Dad. We miss you." The message felt off too conciliatory after days of attacks. Jenna saw it and said, "It's a trap. They'll pressure you to drop the complaint before the board meeting." An hour later, Ellie texted, "Don't come home Sunday. Harlan might stop by. They think they can mediate between you." My blood ran cold. I forwarded Ellie's warning to Principal Carter, who replied, "This is highly inappropriate. I'll contact your parents." That night, another anonymous text came. "Heard you're speaking at the board meeting. Be careful. Harlan has friends on the board. They buried my complaint last year." The weekend was tense. My parents alternated between pleading texts. "We just want to talk," and threats. "You're making choices you'll regret forever." Saturday night, Ms. Lopez sat me down. "Your dad called today," she said. "He threatened to report us for harboring a runaway if you don't go home tomorrow." "Can he do that?" I asked, panicked. Not successfully, she said. You're 17, you've informed school officials of your whereabouts, and you're welcome here. But he also hinted at contacting Jenna's college admissions office to question her character. I felt ill. My parents were targeting Jenna's future to punish her for helping me. I can leave, I said. I don't want to cause trouble. Absolutely not, Ms. Lopez said. That's what they want, to isolate you. Jenna's admissions are solid and your dad's threats are empty. But you need to know what you're up against. Sunday morning, I woke to a trending local hashtag, #stand with Coach Harlan. A campaign had launched to support him before the meeting. Photos showed community members in team jerseys holding signs. I recognized my parents' friends in the crowd. Then I saw it, a photo of my parents outside our house, Harlan between them, all smiling. The caption read, "Supporting a coach who pushes our kids to greatness. The Brooks family knows real coaching isn't always gentle. Tough love is true love." I threw my phone down and sobbed. They were using our family name to prop up a predator. Jenna found me curled up crying. "I can't go to the board meeting," I said. "Everyone's against me." "Not everyone," she said. "Check your email." I opened it to dozens of messages from teammates, other students, and even a few parents. They'd seen the social media campaign and wanted me to know they had my back. Some promised to speak at the meeting. The biggest surprise was an email from Ellie. "I'm sorry, I didn't realize how bad it was. Mom and Dad are out of control. I'll be at the meeting." Sunday night, I barely slept, rehearsing my statement and imagining worst-case scenarios. Monday arrived heavy with dread. The board meeting was set for 4 p.m. School dragged. I barely heard my teachers. At lunch, my teammates surrounded me in the cafeteria, shielding me from stares. After school, Jenna and I headed to the district office. A crowd was already outside. Some with pro-Harlan signs, others wearing purple wristbands. Our team had passed out for solidarity. I spotted my parents near the entrance. Dad was talking to a school board member. Mom was on her phone, looking anxious. Then I saw Harlan, surrounded by supporters, shaking hands like a politician. My steps faltered. Jenna squeezed my hand. "You've got this." As we approached, my parents saw me. Mom started toward us, but Ms. Lopez appeared, blocking her. "Not now, Diane," she said. "Kayla needs to prepare." Mom looked stunned. "She's my daughter. You lost that privilege when you invited her abuser into your home," Ms. Lopez said calmly. We slipped inside. The meeting room was packed. Principal Carter waved us to reserved seats up front. "There's a development," she whispered. 3 former students from Harlan's old schools sent written statements. The board has them. Hope flickered. Maybe I wouldn't be alone. As the meeting began, I glanced back. My parents had entered, sitting far from me. Dad avoided my eyes, but Mom's expression was unreadable. Anger, guilt, or both. The board chair outlined the process. Harlan would speak first, then his supporters, then complainants, and finally, the board would deliberate. Harlan took the podium, exuding confidence. "I've dedicated my life to shaping young athletes," he said, staring at me. "Sometimes that means pushing them past their comfort zones. Sadly, today's culture mistakes tough coaching for something sinister." He touted his record and claimed the accusations came from disgruntled players, at risk of being cut. My fists clenched. He was lying. I'd never been at risk of being cut. I was already glued to the bench. His supporters spoke next, parents of male players, some faculty, and a few girls from our team, who said they'd never seen anything inappropriate. Then it was our turn. Jenna went first, detailing Harlan's behavior with chilling clarity. Other teammates followed, their accounts painting a damning picture. Finally, I took the podium. My legs shook, but I gripped my notes and looked up. My parents were in the back row, but something had shifted. Mom was crying quietly. Dad looked shocked. Ellie sat between them, her face resolute. Something had changed. "My name is Kayla Brooks," I began. "I've played basketball since I was 6 because it's what my family expected, not because I loved it. I was never good enough, for the team, for Coach Harlan, or for my parents." I detailed every humiliating comment, every inappropriate stare, every cross line, staring at the board members, not Harlan or my parents. This was about the truth, not them. When I finished, the room was silent, no applause, just a heavy pause. I sat down, still trembling. The chair called a brief recess before deliberation. Someone tapped my shoulder. "Ellie." "Can we talk?" she asked. Outside, we found a quiet corner. "What do you want?" I asked, arms crossed. Ellie fidgeted. "I need to tell you about Harlan and Mom and Dad." My stomach tightened. "What about them?" "Last night, Harlan came over," she said. "They were talking in the living room. I was upstairs but heard them getting loud. I went down for a snack and overheard Harlan telling them how to handle you before the board meeting. He said he'd dealt with troublemakers at other schools, had a system for difficult girls who threatened his career. I felt sick. What system? He didn't say exactly, but he mentioned parents being the key. If he got their support, the girls always backed down. He bragged about an investigation at his old school getting dropped after he met privately with the complainant. What did Mom and Dad say? They just nodded, saying they needed to get you home to snap you out of it. But then this morning, something weird happened. Dad got a call that set him off. He kicked Harlan out, yelling about being lied to. Mom was crying. I heard Dad say something like, "There's a police report, you bastard." My mind raced. A police report. Someone sent them proof about Harlan. Before she could answer, the meeting resumed. Ellie grabbed my arm. "I'm sorry I didn't believe you, Kayla. I should have had your back." I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to hug her. Part was still hurt. I nodded and went inside. My parents had moved closer to the front, no longer with Harlan's supporters. Mom's eyes were red. Dad looked broken. The chair called the meeting to order. Before we deliberate, we've received new information that must be addressed immediately. Mr. James Harlan, we've learned you were the subject of a police investigation at Lincoln High. Is this true? Harlan stood, pale. That was a misunderstanding, fully resolved. Please answer the question, the chair said. Were you investigated for inappropriate conduct with female students at Lincoln High? Those allegations were dropped, Harlan stammered. The parents realized their daughter was confused. Mr. Harlan. Another board member said, we've obtained police reports filed by 3 families from 2019 to 2021, not disclosed in your application or background check. Can you explain this omission? The room buzzed. I turned to Jenna, as shocked as I was. Someone had dug up real police reports. I thought of the anonymous texts. Had one of those girls sent the evidence? Harlan fumbled, claiming the reports were procedural misunderstandings. His confidence was gone. The chair raised a hand for silence. Given this new information and today's testimonies, the board will conduct a thorough investigation. Coach Harlan is suspended from all duties pending the outcome. It wasn't the final win I'd hoped for, but it was something. Harlan wouldn't be back tomorrow, or anytime soon. As people left, Harlan stormed out, ignoring supporters' questions. Ms. Lopez appeared. Ready, girls? I nodded but saw my parents approaching. Can we talk to Kayla? Mom asked Ms. Lopez. It's up to her. Ms. Lopez said. I hesitated, then nodded. I'll meet you at the car, I told Jenna. Facing my parents, I crossed my arms. What do you want? Mom cried. Dad struggled for words at first. Kayla, he said, voice rough, we're sorry. I stared, unsure I'd heard right. Dad never apologized. This morning, we got an email, he said, anonymous. It had police reports 3 girls from Lincoln High who filed complaints against Harlan. The details, he looked sick. They matched what you told us. So you only believed me when someone sent proof. I couldn't hide my bitterness. You couldn't trust your own daughter. We should have believed you, Mom said, wiping her eyes. We were so wrong, Kayla. We thought we were protecting your future, Dad added. College, scholarships, we thought you were acting out. You thought I was too sensitive, I said. You thought Harlan mattered more than me. They didn't deny it. We want you home, Mom said softly. We know you might not be ready, but your room's waiting whenever you are. I didn't know what to feel, anger, exhaustion, or something else. I need time, I said. I can't pretend nothing happened. Dad nodded. We get it. Take all the time you need. Who sent the reports? I asked. Dad shook his head. We don't know. The email just said, your daughter's telling the truth. They left, and I stood alone in the emptying room, processing. Someone had sent those reports, maybe to the board too. Who? I walked to the parking lot, dazed. Jenna and Ms. Lopez were waiting. Principal Carter was nearby on her phone. She saw me and ended her call. Kayla, she said, how are you holding up? I'm okay, I said, still reeling. I wanted to tell you, the police reports came to the board this morning from an anonymous email. I got a copy too. I studied her. Do you know who sent them? She adjusted her glasses, smiling faintly. Let's just say some educators keep tabs on problematic colleagues for student safety. Was Carter the one who found and shared the reports? Before I could ask, she continued, what matters is the truth came out. Harlan won't work with students here or anywhere. Again, I'll make sure of it. She patted my shoulder. You did the right thing, Kayla. That took real courage. I got in the car with Jenna, feeling lighter. Someone had believed me enough to uncover the truth. Weeks later, life was different. I stayed at Jenna's another week before going home. My parents tried, really tried. Dad took down his old basketball trophies from the den. Mom stopped mentioning college recruiting. At school, the Harlan investigation continued, but he was officially fired 2 weeks after the meeting. The assistant coach took over, and practices became something I looked forward to. The biggest change was how I felt about basketball. Without my parents' pressure or Harlan's cruelty, I started enjoying parts of it. I was still terrible, but it didn't matter as much. One day after practice, Jenna caught up with me. So, she said casually, you don't actually like basketball, do you? I laughed, nearly choking on my water. Not really, never have. What do you like? She asked. If you could do anything after school instead, what would it be? No one had ever asked me that. Maybe writing, I said. I've always liked journaling, making up stories. The school paper needs writers, Jenna said. Their sports columnist graduated. I grinned. So I'd still go to games, just not play in them. Exactly. You'd be with us, doing something you love. That night, I told my parents I wanted to quit basketball. I braced for pushback, but they listened. You sure? Dad asked. When I nodded, he said, okay, what's next? Maybe writing for the school paper. I said, expecting resistance. Mom smiled faintly. We could get you a laptop for your articles. It was a simple conversation, not the fight I'd feared. The next day, I met with the newspaper advisor, who was thrilled to have a new writer. My first assignment was a basketball game recap. Ironically, I was back at the court, but with a notebook instead of a jersey. Watching my old teammates, Jenna scored a buzzer. Beat her. I scribbled notes and felt something new, freedom. After the game, the team crowded around, asking about my article. They were still my people. I just didn't have to play to be with them. In the parking lot, my parents waited by their car. They waved but kept their distance, giving me space. Dad held my notebook. Mom had snacks for the team. They were trying, we all were. For the first time in years, I felt like maybe that was enough.